Hello, and thanks for having me. I'm here representing our very new branch of Bilingualism Matters at Monash University in Melbourne. A little unlike the other talks, I haven't focused in on one particular project tonight. I'm going to give you a bit of an overview of all of the researchers within our team and their research interests, and kind of say we are keen to collaborate with whoever would like to get in touch with us, and to just share a little bit about some of the ways in which we've already done some outreach with community groups and what we hope to do in the future. So a bit of a general talk for you this evening.
Ruth, maybe you want to put the full screen on your presentation?
Yes, I do. Thank you. Here we go. Thanks. Okay, so before I start, I just want to acknowledge the lands on which I speak to you today and recognise that sovereignty was never ceded. And I would like to specifically acknowledge the Wurundjeri and Bunwurrung people, communities of the Kulin Nation, who are the ongoing custodians of the lands on which Monash University now stands. And we pay our respects through our research, teaching and learning to the Wurundjeri and Bunwurrung elders and their past, present and future communities. For those of us, I guess, really focused on and interested in bilingualism and multilingualism in Australia, quite often the elephant in the room is this lack of acknowledgement of Aboriginal languages in the community, and the important work we need to do and to contribute to in sort of fostering and reviving a lot of languages. I won't in tonight's talk spend too much time sort of talking about the context, but perhaps in a future session there might be time to share some more about the Australian context with you. Our team here at Monash University involves, to start with, about 10 academics, 10 researchers from the Faculty of Education. We also have 3 academics from linguistics in the Faculty of Arts who have joined us, and we've got some interest from other universities, some academics in other universities who would like to join the network as well. And we also have between us quite a number of PhD students also doing research relating to bilingualism and multilingualism. So I'm just going to briefly introduce a few of my colleagues and what their research interests are, and invite you to get in touch with us if you hear something that piques your interest. So my own research interests in particular are in looking at multilingual identity. So my research back from my PhD looked at bilingual children and their communication in school and out of school, and how that had an impact on their identities, the ways that they saw themselves. My work's then sort of moved on to also thinking about language teacher identity and how we use our range of languages in the classroom in particular. And most recently, we have quite a big focus in the Australian curriculum on intercultural understanding as an outcome of education, but very specifically within language programs and bilingual programs, this idea that intercultural understanding just sort of automatically happens through learning a language. So I've more recently started looking into how fostering multilingual identities of our students in the classroom can have an interrelationship with development of intercultural understanding, and for that to be more meaningful and more long-lasting in terms of that individual identity development associated with it. My colleague Minhui Nguyen focuses her research on English as an additional language. That's the term used in Australia to refer to children from any language background in the primary school where they speak a language that's not English at home and encounter English for the first time in the primary school. And her research has looked at the collaboration between teachers of content subjects and language teachers in how to teach multilingual learners. And she's now looking at the teacher education side of things, of how to help prepare teachers better for the multilingual reality that we see in a lot of our classrooms here in Melbourne. My other colleague, Rakib Chowdhury, is researching non-English speaking immigrant parents and how they employ family language policies within their own families to foster their own children's bilingualism and to raise their family in according to a particular language policy within their family. So that's the focus of his research. Kim Ann Dang researches English as medium of instruction in higher education in a range of different countries. So that may be of interest in hearing Nicole's talk, because we have a lot of students in our teacher education programs who are from China, Vietnam, and countries where a number of universities decide to undertake or deliver their teaching through English, but not necessarily with the lecturers having kind of any training in terms of the language side of things, and how the lecturers see themselves in terms of what their job is. Is it to teach the language? Is it to teach the content? And if they are expected to do both, how they're best able to do that without perhaps any background in the language side of things. So Kim's research has looked at a range of different contexts. She's undertaken some projects in China, Vietnam, Germany, and here in Australia. And that is ongoing. Another of my colleagues is Anna Filippi. She looks very much at the family situation and children's building of their bilinguality in the home environment. She's currently looking at children's bilingual storytelling, but has done a range of things prior to that. One of my colleagues, Robin Babayev, is very much focused on early childhood, and her research looks at the preschool aged children. And a recent policy that has been implemented here in Victoria, so the state of Victoria is where Melbourne is situated, where they now have 200 preschools being funded to run a language program based on the home languages of their students. And there's not really any guidance on sort of how to do that for the wide range of different languages that we have here. So possibly similar to some of the earlier talks that referred to, this whole range of languages existing in the community, and then when it comes to policy, that not necessarily being, I guess, an easy situation to work within, where perhaps certain languages are given higher priority in policy than others, but where the meaningful languages in the community might be different. Another colleague of mine, Marianne Turner, focuses really on the integration of content and language in bilingual programs, and she has worked quite closely in teacher collaboration programs. So in a couple, well, we have in Victoria 12 officially funded bilingual primary schools that are government primary schools, and those schools have are sort of mandated to implement a 50-50 program in whatever their target language happens to be, and English. And so Marianne's work has been quite a lot in a Japanese English school here in Melbourne. But there are a range of different language programs across those 12 schools. And as a team, we're actually at the moment looking into developing some partnership research with those 12 schools to work with them on, the areas of focus they want to develop within their own bilingual programs. We've managed in the network to bring in some other researchers whose research hasn't necessarily been specifically bilingual focused in the past. Katrina Tour is one of those who has looked very much at technology in language learning, but not necessarily with a bilingual focus. And so she's been really excited to join our Bilingualism Matters branch to sort of branch out into looking at bilingualism more specifically and the relationship of technology in those bilingual settings. And we have 3 colleagues from applied linguistics who focus on, from sociolinguistic sort of perspectives. Dr. Howard Mans, particularly looking at Indonesian language and the relationship to English. Dr. Jill Vaughan, who researches multilingualism in a range of different Aboriginal communities. She's worked very specifically with a group in the Northern Territory who have 5 or 6 Aboriginal languages as well as English going on in that environment. And we also have Associate Professor Louisa Willoughby, whose work most recently has looked at deaf sign language users and the ways in which they're using their language and the impact upon identity that that language has. But on the whole, you know, we're keen to build our research. We're starting off as a branch looking at how we can collaborate together within our group. We were all undertaking all of this various research already, and becoming a branch gives us a chance to become more of a group and to undertake research together, but also to be able to reach out as a group to other researchers around the world, and in the network we hope to build some future projects together, we hope. I guess some tasters of the types of things we've done. So we are all, 10 out of the 13 of us are in the education faculty, and so we work quite closely with schools and community groups relating to either early childhood or school education. My colleague Anne Keary, who I forgot to mention before, but her photo was on the previous slide, she works and has been the president of the Australian Council of TESOL Associations. So that's for, you know, an organisation for any organisation teaching English to speakers of other languages. And she was part of a project as a consultant, developing some new principles of operation for their early childhood sort of recommendations in relation to speaking more than one language. And, you know, we find ourselves, I guess, in this this sort of awkward relationship sometimes where we're working with policy that does come from a very monolingual focus, but on the ground we know that the children we see in our school classrooms are multilingual, and so, you know, we see English as an additional language, in some contexts possibly being, you know, problematic terminology, but, you know, doing our best to kind of form those segues between what we know from the research and the ways we would like to talk about people, and trying to kind of, you know, exert a little bit of influence where we can on some of the policies there. So Anne has led that project in developing those principles and trying to embed some multilingual understandings there. My colleague Gary undertook some research. It was interesting that Carmit earlier was talking about, you know, COVID-19's impact. He undertook some research because here in Victoria we had 262 days in lockdown, and the homeschooling that was going on. He undertook some research with children who didn't speak English at home and how they got on with homeschooling, particularly the younger children who perhaps didn't have, you know, parents at home able to help them in English when the language kind of coming over the computer at them was English, and, you know, not necessarily having that bridge. So that was, you know, quite an eye-opener in terms of a project that Gary was able to undertake during the lockdown, and to kind of reach out to students and find out what extra support they needed when they suddenly found themselves, you know, at home without, you know, so many language supports to engage with the English content at school. My colleagues Marianne Turner and Katrina Tor have undertaken this other project. I've just got a screenshot there from Victoria's Department of Education. The department funded this particular project where they wanted to develop some plurilingual strategies in the sort of mainstream classrooms, and Marianne and Katrina contributed to developing some materials and some resources through that particular project. And oh, that one took me from the link. So go back to the slides. And this is a screenshot of a document that I produced for the Modern Language Teachers Association here in Victoria, who kind of in charge of and affiliated with the bilingual schools here, where they wanted something really accessible to be able to give to parents who enroll their children at one of the bilingual schools. You know, we face similar sort of challenges to what I hear from other people saying in terms of, you know, why do we need to learn another language? You know, English or English is enough. You know, that's kind of one of the general sorts of comments. But, you know, we are fortunate that there are some bilingual programs in a range of different languages, and they wanted some reassurance and some, you know, research-based mythbusters, I suppose, for parents, to reassure them that, you know, their children weren't going to suffer or fall behind in their English learning if they spoke another language at home and then found themselves in a bilingual program. And I drew on some research that I did with a colleague, Leslie Harben, where we somewhat bravely, because we didn't know what we would find, undertook a project looking at NAPLAN results. So in Australia, that's the national standardized testing for literacy and numeracy, which happens in year 3 and year 5, and then it carries on into high school. But we were just looking at primary school, and we actually looked at some schools where there were 2 strands of students, some just going to school in English and a parallel class running in 2 languages. They were different languages in each of the 4 schools that we looked at. And we just looked at their NAPLAN results because we knew there was traditionally some data showing that sometimes children experience a bit of a dip in the newer language to start with, but that does even out eventually. But we actually found that these children didn't experience any sort of a dip, which was quite astounding, that they were outperforming their the monolingually educated peers by about 8% already by year 3, and then still outperforming in these standardized tests. Whether you like the tests or not is another discussion. But you know, if that's the measure that counts in terms of policy and the government taking notice, one of the schools in particular, you know, the children would be expected not to do that well in English because they speak other languages at home, and there's this preconception that, oh, they're not going to do very well in the literacy testing, and a big sort of drama around that. So it was quite significant from our perspective to be able to show, well, not only are these children not doing any worse, they're actually doing better than the kids who are just learning in English. So, you know, I guess we would love to be able to do some more extensive research on that, but, you know, I sort of drew on some of those findings to help bust some myths for the parents who are concerned about, you know, whether or not to carry on speaking their language at home and those kinds of things. So as we're pretty new as a branch, we've also set ourselves up as a research group within the Faculty of Education at Monash. We're still working on getting the website looking snazzy, but there are some bits and bobs there already. So if you are interested in any of the research I've mentioned, or just in getting in touch, please do, you know, reach out to me first of all, and I can always put you in touch with one of my colleagues if the research topic is something someone else is an expert in. But we're very excited to be part of the Bilingualism Matters network, and to hopefully connect with some more of you in the months to come. Thank you.